Hello and welcome everyone to another HeroClix team rundown and tournament report. Today I'll be talking about the tournament that I participated in for the IPF, or International Player Foundation, in Omaha, Nebraska on 4/6/24. This was a Pulp tournament, 300 modern Pulp, and I will go over the team that I played as well as some of the other teams that made top 8, and then kind of discuss what it takes to play this team in a way that is as efficient as possible. Thanks again to Clay Wood for HC Units doing his tournament reports. It makes it very easy to go back to builds and review them. Make sure to check out hcunits.net for all of your team building needs. Starting off, we'll go over my team, kind of the elements that I had on the team and what sort of things were going through my mind when I built this team. For those who are familiar with the Pulp format, you know right now there is one major stay that has to be on every team, and that is Blackheart, Necron, and Orb. If you're playing a team without these three characters, it's probably inefficient. Blackheart, Necron, and Orb allow for some of the most insane reach possible in Pulp, as well as having massive amounts of healing and enabling multifaceted strategies. When we look at characters like Orb, who have both running shot, on dial, and traded charge, Necron, who gives himself the ability to heal past his starting line when he's next to or occupying a grave marker, and Blackheart, who can move and place characters around the map without actually having to worry about carrying them. It's pretty crazy when a format as simple as Pulp gets elements such as these. In my personal opinion, Blackheart, Necron, Uncommon Doctor Strange, and Mr. Sinister should not be allowed in the Pulp format due to just how impactful their presence is and how multifaceted these characters are. Characters that are deemed acceptable in a 300 modern format probably shouldn't be allowed in Pulp games. But for this tournament they were, so let's go over the full build here. Blackheart, Orb, Mr. Sinister, Doctor Strange, Necron, Spiderling, this is the starter Spiderling, Madison, and Robbie Reyes. The thought process for this team is Spiderling is able to select a 1 on her card at the beginning of the game. When you have a 1 loaded, you can replace that 1 in one of your attack rolls, and then Orb can take the other die and replace it to a 1 to force a critical hit. Unless I'm playing against an opposing Spiderling, this means that I can practically guarantee a critical hit on my opening attack no matter what. My opponent cannot stop it, no matter how many accesses to prob they have. Blackheart enables the reach for Orb. Necron is a really good follow-up and control piece because once Orb kills something, Necron starts healing up his dial after you've created a grave marker. In many of my games, I would place up, Orb would do his thing, Necron would heal 2 clicks, and then Necron would shoot something and KO that, and heal all the way to full because of his traded steel energy. It's a very, very powerful combo. Mr. Sinister allows for the game state to be in my favor after I've already alpha struck my opponent. So to add insult to injury, I've already crit hit your team and KO'd a bunch of things. But I rolled double 1s on my attack. So now I have 2 rally dice on Mr. Sinister and can start loading 1s on your attacks to force you to miss. This forces the tempo in my favor. By a considerable margin and really makes it impossible for my opponents to catch up. Doctor Strange, I believe, is one of the best characters in Pulp right now. For 40 points, you get leadership, telekinesis, and perplex access. Plus, his leadership allows you to create astral strangers or even Wong if you roll a 6. The amount of utility that this provides to a team is unprecedented and is way too efficient. Not to play. For my last 40 points, I elected to go with Madison and Robbie Reyes. For 40 points, this gives me an effective +4 to combat values on Orb. Madison gets 2 perplexes when she's next to a character with the mystical keyword, which several characters on my team have. And Robbie Reyes can only perplex to modify speed, but if he targets a character with the vehicle keyword, they get +2 speed and mystics until your next turn. Orb has the vehicle keyword, so this means that between Madison and Robbie, I'm +2 speed and +2 range. This enables me to have full map reach even on a large map with this Pulp team. That paired with Doctor Strange's Perplex, I have an effective +5 to my utility stats because Orb typically doesn't need the Perplex on his attack, as when he crosses over hindering characters or blocking, he gets +1 attack for each of those during his move. This is the full team and what I ended up running. At the end of the video, I will go over a brief explainer for how to play the team, at least for the opener. In second place for the tournament was Alex Mader, the current US national champion. Alex is a local and friend of mine. He was playing effectively the exact same team. The only difference was his last 20 points was Black Cat instead of Robbie Reyes. Black Cat gives friendly characters within 4 squares safeguard probability control. That's pretty insane when you think about how close combat oriented Pulp typically is and how most range values other than Necron are fairly low. This is also an additional probability control usage for the team and an additional access to Spider-Man ally and the Underworld team ability. I think this is a perfectly fine call for Pulp right now. However, I think it does get edged out by my Robbie Reyes as my reach is just inherently longer. Alex and I played in the finals and we were both undefeated. He went for an alpha strike and missed. This could have happened to either of us, it just so happened to happen to him instead of me. I did have a slight advantage as I mentioned because of the fact that I had a higher reach, so he had to go for a suboptimal play and it ended up paying off for me. In top 4 we had Richard Zatlukal and Tristan Halverson. I played against Richard and he was playing a soldiers / mystical or monster team with Falcon, Blackheart, Red Widow, Orb, Necron, Stepford Cuckoo, and Goon. Winning initiative against Richard, he ended up taking me to the construction site map, which, understanding my team, is not very optimal. I elected to KO Red Widow and his Doctor Strange immediately, which I see Doctor Strange isn't listed on here, so Clay must need to get that updated. After KOing Doctor Strange and Red Widow, he didn't have the offense capability in order to take out the rest of my team. Tristan was playing a very similar team to me as well. The only difference was he was using Red Widow and Stepford Cuckoo over Spiderling and Robbie Reyes. This is a really solid team. I just don't think it has as much utility as the team that I was piloting. In top 8, we had Isaac Denke, Seth Davis, Aaron McCoy, and Grant Hollinshed. Isaac was playing probably one of the more unique teams just because he had Iron Fist and Manifold on his team. It has a lot of offense just like mine and uses the Blackheart Orb and Necron combo, but without the ability to force crit hits, it does lose some of the tempo that I can have. Seth was playing a version of the Pulp team that I had recommended back in January for what I thought Pulp was going to be and where it was headed. Effectively, instead of playing Spiderling, he elects to play Blue Marvel on the team and then Manifold. He is still playing Mr. Sinister over Red Widow, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, but the team is definitely very solid. I think if you're going to play Mr. Sinister, you do need to play Spiderling with it. Otherwise, focus on the Blue Marvel and Red Widow combo and just go for the offense. Aaron McCoy's team was incredibly unique because he played Lex Luthor. I love this play because he gives everybody on his team outwit, and since most things in Pulp are not safeguard outwit, he can just sit there and outwit you with impunity. It's a really powerful squad, it just can't survive against all the crit hits. Grant was playing the exact same team as Tristan Halverson, and I played against Grant both round 1 of Swiss and in top 8. Grant is currently in the military and hasn't had as much time to practice. I don't fault him for not understanding how to play properly against my team. That's a quick rundown of the IPF top 8, so let's go ahead and get into a quick scenario where I show you how to alpha strike with the squad. Loading onto the board state, this is how I typically set up my units. I chose Otherworld Castle as the map because if I'm going first, I don't really care what map I'm on, and if I'm going second, I'm always choosing Otherworld Castle. The main reason for this is I have full map reach and my opponents do not for the most part, so I feel safe knowing that I can go to a big outdoor map and exhibit as much pressure as possible. For my setup, I typically set up in this sort of a formation for a multitude of reasons. Blackheart has a clear line down the map, enabling him to be able to place up or down on the elevated or just straight down. Necron and Orb are adjacent and can follow wherever he goes. Doctor Strange being on the elevated allows him to have a clear TK path for a variety of different characters, and available space and line of fire to do perplexing, and setting up the creation of Astral Stranges and Wongs should he hit his leadership. I trap Madison in the back row in between all the characters. That way if I roll a 1 on turn 1, my opponent can't put her anywhere she's not supposed to be. If I roll a 2, I can just move her forward 2 squares carrying Robbie because they both have the mystical keyword. Spiderling just stays back as well, mostly to trap in Madison, but also because she has sidestep and can kind of move up on her own. When my turn begins, I always do things in the following order, just to determine what my game state is going to be before I start making actual decisions. Roll for leadership on Strange to see if you get an Astral or a Wong, then roll Madison to see where your Madison is going to be ended up. From there, I place my fire marker with Blackheart, and then proceed to do any other beginning of game effects that might happen, like willpower or other leaderships like from Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister being here next to Doctor Strange also gives him a leadership option to remove tokens should Doctor Strange need to TK or move. When I place my fire marker, I typically look at how my opponent is set up and where they are positioned on the map. If I need to go up onto the elevated, I will, otherwise I can just go straight down. Blackheart's range is a 5, so you always have to place at least 5 away for that fire marker. The thing to remember though is Blackheart doesn't have to be placed inside his fire marker when he uses his trait. he can be placed in any hindering. So this includes printed hindering on the map, debris from destroyed blocking, or even grave markers from Necron. So keep that in mind. Let's assume an optimal turn. I roll leadership and get an Astral Strange. From there, Madison rolls a 2, and I get to move her up to 2 squares. I'll put her here, carrying Robbie Reyes. What this enables me to do is get a Perplex on Orb with Robbie and with Madison since she's next to mystical characters, and then all I have to do is place Blackheart 5 squares. I can place Blackheart, Necron, and Orb can be placed the long way. Assuming all of my Perplexes went into Orb to give him +2 speed and +3 range, he can then running shot 6 squares, and Energy Explode 7 for right outside the starting area. However, if you need to get cheeky with how you do things, you can set up like this. When Madison rolls a 2, you can take Madison and carry Blackheart up. Robbie is still next to Orb, so he can perplex his values that way. Now, you can place a grave marker 5 squares away from Blackheart. Blackheart can jump to the grave with Necron and Orb, and assuming we did the same perplexes as before, you can running shot 6 and then shoot 7. Now Orb has full map reach. So when we look at our alpha, we need to be determining how we're placing our characters and then go from there. When Orb running shots, it's also important to determine your path to see what characters, elevated, and hindering you can go over, because you'll get +1 attack for all of them. While it doesn't necessarily matter because we want to force the critical hit with Spiderling likely anyways, it is still nice depending on if you're going to be flurrying, as you might want to hit the first attack, only dealing 3 damage, and then crit hit the second attack to finish something off. I use this method a lot of times when I was attacking opposing orbs, because if we're both playing Mr. Sinister, I need your orb to be gone so you cannot force crit hits with the ones that I'm assigning you. Priority targets for Pulp right now is Orb must die first. From there, if they're only playing a single leadership in Doctor Strange, take it out. Locking them down to 3 actions is super helpful. If they're also playing Sinister, then don't worry about it. After Orb, if they're playing a Red Widow, she probably needs to go as far as attackers are concerned, unless you can line up a 1-shot, 1-kill on their opposing Necron. If you can KO the Necron, then take it. If you can't, ignore him for the time being, because putting him to his last click doesn't do anything. Apart from that, these 3 are the main damage dealers for your force, so it's very important to keep them alive at all costs, or at the very least make sure your trades are worthwhile. You can utilize the Astral Stranges to give Necron additional damage, and Madison can carry those Astrals around should you be at that status of the game. You have probability control access on Orb, Necron initially, and Spiderling, so don't forget to utilize it if you feel it's necessary. This team is incredibly powerful and has a lot of different dimensions to it, too many to go over in one video, but for the most part, it's full map reach, eliminate priority targets, and then use Mr. Sinister to control the game for the remainder. I hope this was insightful for you, and it taught you a little bit of where my headspace was at when I was building this team and how I played it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.